Thank you, Anne, so much for taking out the time to have this conversation with us today.
Well, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me. Yeah, I'm really pleased to be here.
So, Anne, your journey started with the near-death experience. What happened and how did it shift your life and spirit?
Okay, so I've had, well, I'd say four near-death experiences in total. Um, the first one was the biggest one that really compounded my life. It really changed a lot. I mean, before then, it was, you know, regular being mum, having a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, taking them to school, rushing around as you do. And thinking that you're always guaranteed the next day in your life, which I found out that you're not. But so it's made me very mindful of how I spend my days now and every minute of my day. And so with that day when it happened, it was the 11th of March, my first near-death experience, 2002. And I literally was in a rush, like most parents are, first thing in the morning, trying to get the children ready for school. I had pets as well, dogs running around the house. And I was just thinking I had to get to work and I had to take the children to school in the car, take them to the school gates. And I remember that day, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, the more that you are stressed as a parent, they become quite stressed and start playing up. And that morning, I mean, now they are literally going to be 31 and 29 this year. But at the time, I'll never forget it. I was panicking and in such a rush to get away from them, to get ready to get on the train to get to London. And I remember just quickly kissing them on the forehead and saying goodbye to them. And when I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, there's still the guilt that lays inside of me. And I'm a counselor and I should know better than this, but there's still that guilt of being, not that I want to be the perfect mother, but you know, what happened on that day. And they don't forget. And we often talk about it, which is great because I talk to them now as they are adults, they understand the situation. And my son just had a baby and his baby's 7 months old. And we've been very reflective recently about this and, you know, bringing up children and stuff like that. And nothing's promised, nothing's guaranteed in life at all about life and death. And yeah, so that day when I left them, they said that they remembered that day very well. Not that I didn't kiss them at the gate. That's not the bit they don't remember. That's the bit they remember. They remember the day that dad actually came to pick him up from school because dad never picked him up from school. And they remember that their father literally didn't cry. And it still sits with them today that they can't understand why he didn't cry. Obviously, he was in shock. And then they remember the story after that, how I was disabled. But if I go back, so 11th of March, Rush kissed him on the forehead and sort of like I was in a hurry, said goodbye to him, ran to the station, got on the train, and it was a normal, regular day at work. This is the thing. We always think that the day that we're going to die, maybe we'll get a message or maybe something will happen that we know to make the best of the day. And before this accident happened, you know, I always like to believe, there is such thing as angels, but I wasn't really, I wasn't too sure what I believed in. I prayed as a child, like believing there must be something bigger than me, always searching there must be more to life than this and stuff. But that day really woke me up. That was really a spiritual awakening day. So it was a regular day. I worked for a charity in London. It was a befriending scheme for the elderly, and I absolutely loved it. That was my soft spot of creating the charity and also helping befriended scheme for people to go out and see the elderly in their community and to help them, even if it meant taking them out for a walk or reading a newspaper or a letter or whatever. Anyway, on that day, I worked in a community centre and I remember I had, it was an important document, a letter at that time. I don't know why it just couldn't be sent by email, but it was an important document that had to be posted. And I thought, gosh, I've got to get on the train by a certain time, 2:30 on that day. I've got to get on the train at 2:30. I've got to go pick up the kids. I've got to make sure that they're going to be okay. And I remember I was rushing and I remember I'd typed out the letter because it seems so now we're in what 2025. It's crazy now to think back then. Typed out the letter and got it already sealed up in the envelope. And I remember saying goodbye to everyone in the community centre, all these old dears that were playing bingo or they're on the piano and saying, we'll see you tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. I've got to go now, got to rush, got to go and post this letter and got to get my newspaper before I get on the train and so I left the community centre and everyone saying goodbye to me. It was lovely. And I remember as I was walking out the building, walking to the road, the crossing. at the junction. I remember walking there, thinking in my head, as we all do, we're weighing everything up. Shall I go post the letter here in London, or shall I take it with me on the train to where I used to live and deliver it there, or shall I go get my newspaper? It was all going over my head. And then I was just like, do you know what? I'll leave it a chance. And if someone presses the button at the traffic lights, the pedestrian crossing, then I'll cross the road. I think there was about five other people there on that day. And I remember someone had pressed the button, and I remember I could hear the button and the sign saying pedestrian can cross it. And out of habit, I sort of always look both ways, wherever the traffic is, stopped on whatever side of the road. And there was a traffic island, a pedestrian island in the middle of the road to break up the road. So one traffic goes that way, the other cars go that way. And I was still thinking, you know, oh, should I just go to the post box to post it, the letter? It would have been straight across the road. Or should I turn to my right slightly and go get the newspaper first and go back to the post box? And I was just trying to weigh it all up. And then I heard something in my head. It felt as if it was in my head, like a little voice from my, well, at the time I didn't really think it was my nan until a little bit later on, but heard a little voice in my head, and it might just be my intuition. Go and, get the newspaper first, which to me logically didn't make sense. So that's what the logical mind's like. I was arguing the logical mind, my intuition, or my higher self, who knows. And I decided that I was going to go get the newspaper first. And that was where we have this free will, this choice, what we make, that, whatever. And when you're very open to like spirituality and stuff, and that openness, following that gut instinct or the intuition or your higher self, it changes your life forever. And this is what happened. So, and again, at that time, I didn't know, but I know that now when I teach my students. And so I followed it. I thought, okay, fine, I'll go get the newspaper afterwards. So I was on the middle island and I stepped out, but I had looked to the left and traffic had stopped because it was green man for the pedestrians to cross and everyone else was crossing. But as I turned to my right, just to check both ways, which I didn't need to, but as I turned to my right, I heard again, go to your right. And I was like, okay, so it was only meant by stepping at a slight different angle. When I did that, that actually kept me alive, even though I died. I'll explain. Um, there was a van that had come through the crossing where I was walking across, and he hadn't stopped at the red light. And he was on the phone, someone remembers seeing, and he drove straight through me at quite a fast speed, like 40 miles per hour. And he had physically hit my body. But because I'd been at an angle, it hit this side of my body, and I sort of bounced off the vehicle and about, I don't know, 10 foot in front, I whacked down and hit my right hand side of my body. That's what happened. And with the internal bleeding and injury, I died. Um, but what happened for me that I remember was I didn't feel the impact of the van hitting me at all. And I heard my nan's voice saying, and my nan had died when I was 15, and she had brought me up as a child because we had domestic violence in my home. There was a lot of abuse. And I heard my nan's voice, and she said, I feel emotional now. Everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. And I was like, well, how comes I can hear my nan's voice? I don't understand. And then I felt very warm, as if a big duvet, or I'd been hugged by, something warm around me. And I felt safe. And I remember feeling that there was this white, it was a very white environment around me, like this brilliant white light, not a light that you have to squint your eyes out, but a beautiful white light around me. And I felt very, very safe. And I didn't know it was a bit strange. I didn't know it was where I was. I didn't know what was going on, but I just felt very safe being there. Heard my nan's voice, and she was sort of comforting me. And then I was being shown information where I was, which was quite bizarre. Now there was another part of me, so that was where my soul was being held in that safe space, that environment. I later found out that, it's the Akashic Records I was at, I was given information there. They were sort of giving me a life review of what I'd been through from my childhood and why I'd had the 5 miscarriages, why I'd been abused. It was a full sort of telling me everything, why I was in a toxic relationship, why I needed to get out of that toxic relationship, what I was going to go on to do. Um, and all this information being downloaded. It was like I was being shown scrolls of information and books, and it was a bit like Star Trek at points. It was like as if information was in the air, and there was like, as the page turned over in this book, it wasn't like a book that we have here. It was just each like page or each chapter of my life, my past lives and everything of what was going on, any blockages in this life, what I needed to go through, my soul journey through, time and space, and just being shown all the information. And I remember at the time thinking, I must remember. It seemed to be really important, all this information I needed to know. And I didn't know what they were called at the time, but now I do because I'm a spiritual teacher. My guides were there waiting for me and giving me a download of information, and they was telling me all the information that I needed to know as I was going to go on moving forward. But then there was this other part of me where I felt that I had this real out of body experience where I didn't know I died. It was like 6, 7 minutes long. And there was another part where I was looking down. And again, I didn't know it was my physical body in the road, but I was looking down and I could see the shopkeepers coming out. There was a hairdressers that came out with a towel rolled up. So I'm going to put it under her neck. And someone shouting, so don't touch her. She might have damaged her spine. And there was a family member, Uncle Peter, that worked in the same area as myself, and it was my ex-partner's uncle at the time, and he'd seen everything that had happened and he was in shock. And I was like, I didn't know. I was wondering, why was he standing there in this audience looking at this body, not knowing it was my body? Why does he look so upset? Why is he like, look so grey in the face in shock? And why all these people in the road sort of looking around? And so I could feel all their sensations, all their emotions and feelings of being in shock, like this woman had got knocked down and whatever. And then I could hear the ambulances coming, and there was a paramedic arrived on his motorbike and parked in a certain location. And later on, I'd said to somebody, well, to prove to them that I knew what was going on, I said, well, I saw the paramedic parking further down the road. They said, but you had died. How could you see that? I went, no, but I remember seeing it. And I remember seeing that person in the audience. I remember seeing that person in the crowd and whatever. Um, and he came over, and then the ambulance came and everything. But while this was all happening, still, my part of me was like, I'd sat in a lorry with this lorry driver. Part of my spirit, my essence of who I was, sat in this truck with this lorry driver, and he was swearing and cursing and saying he's going to be late because this silly woman's got knocked down. And then I could hear on the radio station that, warning people don't go to that part of London because the traffic had stopped. There's going to be a helicopter to air ambulance to lift her. And this talking about me, I didn't even realize. And I could see all this. And then someone had phoned my partner, and I was wondering why he was sort of not running. He was walking quite sternly down the road, and his mum was running because they had a bakery shop up the road from there. And they were coming down the road, and I was like, what are they doing? And I didn't realize it was because of me. And it was only literally when my ex-partner, had put his hand on my head that his faults, and I heard his faults, which was bizarre. His faults were, how am I going to cope looking after Rebecca and Nathan? And it was about him, not about I love Anne and she's died or anything, nothing like that at all. And it that hit me hard, and I realized I need to get out of this relationship. It did take me 32 years to get out of the relationship, but anyway, and so that was all happening on one level, the out of body experience and looking down and seeing the paramedics and them cutting my clothes off there. And then they had paddled my heart. And then I remember I felt the pain when I came back into my body. It felt like being at a water slide in a water theme park. We whizzed down and felt into my body. And then I realized I was in a lot of pain. And, that's when they rushed me to hospital. And during the process of me being taken to hospital in the ambulance, I remember that our body experience looking down at the top of the ambulance, seeing the number of the ambulance and popping in and out of that, and then going into crash at the hospital where I had three sets of teams working on me. And they were cutting off all my clothes. And I often say that, if I was aware of that, I would have been quite embarrassed because I was naked. But as a soul, you don't care. As I'm looking down, it made no difference at all. But I could feel the tension in the air that at some point they thought they were going to lose me again. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I survived that, but I remember being in hospital intensive care, how when I finally came out of being there a number of weeks, that the nurse that was looking after me, she said there were moments where you were holding something. And I said, well, where's my nan? And she said, there's been nobody here but myself. And obviously my nan was there in spirit taking care of my physical body. And my nan had passed when I was 15. I was in my 30s then. But I ended up with injuries, massive injuries. They were going to amputate my foot. At one point, my foot had twisted outside of my ankle, it ripped my ankle, seven breaks in my foot. My ankle was shattered. There was lots of injuries there and bones broken and stuff. And I had lots of operations on it at that time. My hip was fractured on my right hand side where it had the impact of the ground. My knee was broken, the cartilage was damaged. The internal bleeding from my spleen and my kidneys. I had to have my gallbladder removed later on. That's what, there was a great pressure on my heart, and my heart had stopped. And after the accident, it took 4 years for me to learn to walk with unaided. So I was in a wheelchair for a couple of years, and then had a walking stick. Yeah, and oh yeah, and I had loads of ribs that were fractured on both sides and stuff and that. So it was hard. It was hard going. I look back and I laugh at it now, but that was the first near death experience that really woke me up.
Now, you mentioned free will, and you mentioned that you heard the voice telling you to go get like a newspaper first before crossing. Now, do you think this do you think you could have avoided this, or do you think it was something you had to experience?
Right, great question. I love that. And no, I had to experience it. I had to go through that awakening, and I wasn't listening. For years, I hadn't listened. I was in a toxic relationship, which made sense because of being a toxic family, domestic violence, dysfunctional family as a child. I'd gone straight into another relation. Well, I'd gone into a relationship that was similar. And it was like I was meant to be here for a bigger purpose, a bigger reason. And I'd always felt that as a child, we are always here for something more than the 3D reality of the world that we live in, working 9 to 5 and paying bills and stuff like that. Nothing made sense to me as a child growing up. I could hear animals, nobody else could. I didn't know that at the time. I thought everyone heard animals speaking. Um, I could see spirit. I didn't know I was a natural, psychic medium. I didn't know I was going to do that later on in life. And I had healing, but I could do healing on people and stuff and I didn't really realize that I really needed to stop. So the free will in a way is a way that you're given these opportunities. And I even, recently things have happened. I've been given some opportunities and it's up to us whether we say yes, okay, we signed up for this, and whether we go, right, okay, I'm going to do it in this lifetime. I'm going to go on with it. That's that free will. That's that going with, right, okay, I'm here, I might as well just go for it and whatever. And after having a seizure 2 years ago and a brain bleed and breaking my neck, I'm like, okay, I hear you loud and clear. I know what I gotta get on with. But that's the free will, whether we do it or not. Okay. The voice is very different. That gut instinct is that sensational, that feeling, or you might hear that voice. It's not the subconscious mind. Subconscious mind is the one that seems to put us down, or the one with the ego that keeps us small. It's there, or it's about keeping us safe. So I know as a therapist and a counselor with my clients, is that, when they're resisting something and they're changing their behavior and changing their lives, because that's what I help people do now. It's like that's that ego, the inner voice that sort of stops you from doing things or says, oh, should you do that? Do you think it's an overprotective parent? That's the subconscious. The intuition is that feeling, that sense of like an animal, that sixth sense, knowing there's going to be a storm, animal, tsunami, human knowing there might be something happen. I didn't know anything was going to happen on that day. That voice was sounded like my nan or that higher self, my higher self. And as I teach my students and my clients, your higher self is the soul consciousness, it's your soul awareness that communicates with you. So I had to have that accident. Looking back, it changed my whole life. It made me look at the metaphysical world. It made me look into we are more than what we imagine. I have so many clients that come to me that have been through trauma or something that's happened to them in life and trying to make sense. And when I do go for the Akashic records or past lives with them or look at their life now, we look at it and we go, this is why this has happened. Because you see, if we imagine this is what life's about, 3D world, and things happen, I could sit there and go, I was born into a family of domestic violence. Worries me. This happened to me, and I don't grow. I don't expand. I stay stuck. If I look at just my own childhood, but I mean, I've got thousands of clients around the world. When we look at it, if we look at it and think, worries me, this has happened to me, instead of looking at this has happened for me to help me to grow and to understand and to move forward, we become stuck. So, our soul's here on a recycle button. Our soul's here to learn. And the only way our soul can learn is when it's in a sensory physical body, as in being in the human body. So we're more than the human body, which I didn't know that at the time. So I've learned through my connection with source when I, Akashic records, when I work with light council, and this is what I pass on to my students when I do my channeling, that as a channeler, I know that we're here for more than just the 3D world. I mean, how did I survive that accident? I died. I died, second time lung collapse, third time I was in operating theatre, heart stopped. Recently, I'd say fourth time was the seizure. I had a brain bleed. I was disabled for 14 weeks, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, fell down the stairs, broke my neck. I should be dead again. And again, it was about rewiring my mind, looking at my viewpoint and helping others. So our free will is, do we go, this has happened to me, there's nothing I can do about it, or do we go free will, as in seeing this as an opportunity, what is it showing me, what is it teaching me, what can I gain from this? And that's how I saw it.
So you've gone through so many NDEs. So you needed a first awakening, but what was like the rest of them? Like if you were already on the spiritual path, you were already communicating with spirit on, doing the healing, what and the work within yourself, whatnot. But why did you pick those, other NDEs? How
I
did
got it.
they change you?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I love what you're saying. As I say to my students, there are layers of ourselves and understanding. When I sit when I sit as a counselor with my client, and I know the answer to whatever's going on in their situation, but I need my client to get that understanding. I want my client to go, aha, I've got that, I understand. It's like those aha moments of understanding. Now, when we're on a soul journey, living in our human experience, a human being, because we have to have a sensory system, as in seeing, hearing, touch, and feeling. When we're on that level, we start to understand it. So, my first near-death experience 20 something years ago, it woke me up to the fact, actually, because as a counselor then, I was like, I did not believe in near-death experiences. I didn't believe in any of that. I thought the brain kicked in. I thought the brain creates this illusion in your mind and that you imagine that this is what's happening. That's what, and at the time, again, I didn't know about guides, spiritual guides. I didn't know about light counsel. So it woke me up, as in, come on, Anne, wake up. There's something more than just living 9 to 5 jobs, living the experience we have. And all the biological science things, because I was interested in science. I didn't really believe in all this. I could see the spirits when I was younger, but I wasn't too sure. And there was a point that it cut off that, I was told if you tell people that you see spirits, they're going to think you're crazy. So I shut it down as a teenager. So I forgot that, had my children, and then, I was angry at God, the universe, because I had 5 miscarriages and I was in this toxic relationship. I had to blame somebody. And if you blame external, you don't deal with it internally. So having the first experience, I started learning that there's more to life than what we see. So I started becoming really inquisitive, started learning in different colleges around the world, started doing loads of different courses. It started waking me up to the fact that actually I can see I'm psychic. I can see spirits now. I forgot that I was a natural medium from a baby or a child, whatever. I'd forgot about that. That woke me up. I then discovered that I became a Reiki master. I trained in that field for over a year. and I could feel the healing through my hands. And then I became a medical intuitive. So it's layers and layers and layers of different understanding. So they couldn't give it all to me at once to go this. I think it'll blow my mind. It still blows my mind now what they want me to do. But so I had to learn those certain layers. It's like being kindergarten where you have to learn, our ABCs before we start creating a sentence or developing an essay. So you get an understanding of who you are. So I started developing and learning that who I am. It woke a lot of things up inside me. And then the second time I didn't really believe in angels. I was like, come on, people are crazy. And literally the lung had collapsed. I have I'm disabled. I hate saying that because I don't think I am, but medically I have a lung condition, which I later found out was from a past life. And in this life, I've made a few changes. And being told at the time you have to be on oxygen for the rest of your life, you can't walk, you can't do this because your lungs are going to collapse on you. It scared me. The human part of me that didn't understand that I'm more than just the human physical body. I locked myself away for 2 years with agoraphobia. I couldn't leave the house because I kept on believing that the label the medical teams had given me that my life was restricted. I believed in it. I Googled it and I was like, well, I've got this condition. My lung could collapse at any point. Um, and I was scared. So that was after the first near death, the living the life as the human. We get caught up in all your life situations, paying bills and the relationships that you have. And again, you don't know. This is like the ABCs, it's like the layers of you. So second time, I had pneumonia. My lung had collapsed at home. And my daughter was in the house, 2009 this was, and she came running upstairs because she had this large bang. Now the bang, I mean, when I say it still now, I just think it's just crazy when I think of it. But when my chest was getting tighter, it's like having a belt that you have around your waist, but you have it around your chest. And I was breathing in. Every time I breathed in, the belt got tighter and tighter around my chest, and I just couldn't breathe. Now I'd had panic attacks through stress before, but I knew this wasn't that. And my ribs was in so much pain. And I literally said, again, I was still questioning it. I was like, if there's a God, this wouldn't be happening, if there's really such thing. And I was like, I need some help. I literally shouted out, I need some help. And I couldn't breathe. And then I had this thump by the side of me. And it was very strange. It was at the corner of my eye. And, I saw this like statue. It was like an angel with their forehead, with their hand here resting on their forehead. And they had bowed down to me by the side of me and said to me, "May I be of service?" And I was scared. I was like, I'm delusional because I've got lack of oxygen to my brain. My brain, I went to logical practical mind. We're human. This is what we do. We function as human beings every day. We go straight to that. And I was like, I'm losing the plot. What's happening? And said you called, and I was introduced to Archangel Michael. Um, and that was the heavy thump. I thought the ceiling or the roof had collapsed, where I had this thump by the side of me. It was like a 30-foot tall figure. And I said, I can't breathe. Anyway, my daughter came running up. She didn't see anything, but she called the ambulance. The ambulance came out. I was rushed into hospital. That was my awakening to angels and the work that I was going to do with them. I had to have another understanding. I couldn't be introduced to them straight away. And then, the third time I was taken into hospital. This was 2018 now. I had a big operation. And I remember walking down to theatre. I walked down to theatre. I had started training, mediumship training, and, all the colleges. I'd done it more. I was working professionally now as a medium, which I absolutely love and adore. And yeah, I had this operation. And it was a blue room, walking into this blue operating theatre. And next minute I know, I was in a white room and I couldn't work out. I was like, why am I here? And I just remember feeling as if I'd gone to see a headmaster at a school, that feeling of being I'd done something wrong. And I was like, why am I here? Where am I? White room, no walls, just expansion of space. And I remember this gentleman turned around to me. He had this like a uniform. a white uniform. Like he remind me of a dentist that we have in the UK. They have double buttons up and stuff, but this bit was not done up to the top. It was sort of hanging like this, and he had glasses, circle rims. I don't know why they portrayed his image like that. And he had this funny looking fringe that stopped here, and he had like this little flip chart thing in his hand, sort of, whatever. And he's turned around, he's talking to someone, and he's talking to me, and he goes, "Yes, I'm just telling her now." He said, "You've got to go back. Why are you here? Go back. You're not supposed to be here." And he looked at his thing. "You're not here yet. You've got to go back. There's more work you've got to do." And I remember standing there going, "Huh? Where am I?" And then I went, "Oh, okay. I know where I am. Okay, send me back." And I remember that feeling of being told off that there was more work that I needed to do here. I hadn't quite finished, and there was more information that came in. And then I remember when I came round, my before I opened my eyes, my ears were hearing the bells going off in the operating theatre. And I'd worked in the hospital at that time as well as a consultant. And I remember the bell going off and team of staff, and the anaesthetist looked over me. She goes, "She's back. She's okay." And she had her face so close to me. She goes, "Oh, that was a close one. We thought we'd lost you. Your heart had stopped." And I remember the nurse next to me, this lovely lady, Jamaican lady. And I said to her, she was holding my hand, she goes, "We thought you lost you." And I went, "Oh no, now your son, you've got to tell him, and this is from your grandma." I came straight in with a message for her. And she went, "Oh, yeah, we know where you've been." And the room was back to being blue again. And again, there was more information that came in. So again, it's like being at kindergarten. I'd moved from kindergarten when I had my first near-death experience. They had given me some information, told me stuff. I was learning at my own speed and pace, which takes quite long, they said, for human beings. So I just heard them then. And then I went to the next level. There was another experience, as in the lungs. I learnt more information, introduced to my angels. And then this one, with a heart stop, I learnt more information. And then, I became a professional medium and a channeler. And then, as I say, I had a seizure February, Valentine's Day, 2022. I collapsed, had a brain bleed, and broke my neck as I fell down the stairs.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, but I'm still here.
So, what is soul awareness, and how can someone begin connecting with their soul and life purpose?
Oh gosh, right. Yes, big questions. The information that I channel now that I'm really aware of, I do this sort of every other Monday now, and I work with my students on. It's really about us learning that we are more than what we see in the mirror, that knowing that everything that happens to us in this lifetime is really about waking us up to that actually we are more. So if there's this belief, and I totally believe this, where we live many different lifetimes. So there's that soul journey, that journey of the soul, when the soul becomes aware of itself. So they gave me they showed me, the Light Council had showed me at some point, and I show this to my students, that it's a bit like in this country we have a lot of birds that flock together. So there's a certain place in the UK with like starlings all flock together, and they all are moving and moving around and stuff, and they become part of a flock and they move around and stuff. And then occasionally you'll get a little bird that goes off and does its own little thing. Now, when I've been communicating with Light Council, it's very much a bit like the soul, the essence of the soul, that you are one, that you're all connected to source, God, source, the universe. And there's this beautiful unconditional love. And I felt that every time that I died, I had felt this unconditional love. And it's something I've never experienced on planet Earth before. Um, I never really felt loved as a child, and it's not that it worries me. It's just that because the situation my mum had been in, and the family domestic violence, and she'd been married 3 times, and we'd had starvation, we were hungry. There was times when she was a single parent, it was really hard. And I always felt that I was, if I look back, I came across as really being that child who was the counselor, the one that sort of helped my mum between the relationship. My dad, he was kicking her or something, like my stepdad, this is, or my alcoholic father, or whatever it is. And I was always in the middle, always helping. I never really was that child, and I never felt that sort of love. And when I go back to the near-death experiences, the feeling that I couldn't put my finger on, the most beautiful experience that I felt was being unconditionally loved. And it's hard to put the words to it, but it's that feeling of being accepted. It's that feeling of being as one as something else, not just singular. I always felt as a child that I was the odd one out in the family. I was the black sheep of the family, that I didn't fit in. I was always the odd child, and I spent all my life feeling that I was very odd and different from everyone else, feeling that I was here for another purpose, but didn't understand that. But I did through my near-death experiences. And it doesn't mean you have to have a near-death experience to experience this, because I have loads of clients, thousands of students around the world. It doesn't mean that at all. But what I teach them is to be able to connect to the higher self, which is like your soul consciousness. So again, if we go back to imagining the starlings flying all together, or any birds that fly in a flock, that's what they showed me. It's like you become as one, like the essence of the universe, God, you are unconditionally loved. The minute the soul becomes aware that there is something about growth, there is something it wants to learn, the soul can't doesn't sort of learn the feelings or the emotions outside of a physical vessel. The physical vessel is the human being that we have here, the biological being, and the senses, our touch, feel, and seeing, for our skin and everything else. So generally, the soul has an understanding that it's time to learn, it's time to wake up, as in this essence of the starlings flying together. Say, for instance, the example of that. The soul then is incarnated into a human being, and through many lifetimes the human starts to, well, the soul wakes up. For me, there was many situations where I detached. It was safer as a child to detach from a situation of seeing the violence, mum being beaten up, or my dad had got a knife out to her, or he was an alcoholic and he would kick me and beat me up. So I detached. Psychologically, I detached from that moment. And I have many clients who, when I go back with them, like post-traumatic stress, or go back into what's happened to them, sometimes they don't remember what happened in childhood. That if they want to uncover, it's time that we look back and we explore what happened at the time. I totally detached. I didn't want to be in that moment. It's a safety mechanism, that part of ourselves cuts it off. So through my experience, it woke me up. But again, through therapy, you can see a therapist or a soul coach or whatever it is that you want to see, and you can investigate, you can look at it. The minute you have that awareness, or whatever it is, somebody might lose their job, or the relationship breaks down. It could be any factor in your life that gives you that moment of waking up. There must be more to life. Generally, I have somebody says to me, there must be more to life. You're already waking up, that you're realizing we didn't just come here to do the job, as in going to work to pay the bills. There is more than that. Then you've woken up. And then that's the beginning process of looking at the soul work. That's looking at, why could you be here? I have some individuals that come to me that whatever's going on in their life right now, it might be a reoccurring connection with a soulmate or a twin flame, that they're going through a situation they can't get out of. And then we investigate, and I look back and we look at, could it be a past life where, I need to prove it. I'm not one of those that sit there and go, I'm reading the Akashic records, this was your past life, and so you have to believe in it. I look at what was your past life, and I bring the connection into your present self. And I'd say to them, right, this might be happening in your lifetime because I'm seeing it happen in a past lifetime. And, I'd say 99% people say, well, I've never had anyone say no, actually, but saying, yes, that makes sense. I'm having that thing that's playing out in this lifetime. I said, because of that connection you had with that person then. So if it's unfinished business in a relationship in a past life, it's going to show up in this lifetime. I've found that a lot of individuals, when we do the inner child work and we look at the inner wounds, that there might be something that an adult says, as a child I was always scared of this, or as a child I always wanted to be a pilot, or I wanted to do this, because that's an unfinished project that you might have had in a past life, and you've come in as, I always knew I wanted to be a zookeeper when I came in. There was nothing else. So there's something, I'd worked with animals before in a previous lifetime. So it rolls on. But our job in this lifetime is to wake up to who we really are. And the minute you start waking up for whatever it is, whether it's a broken down relationship, or you lose all your money, or whatever it is, you then start doing that work on yourself. You start connecting to your higher self. And that's when I call it soul consciousness. Your soul consciousness is aware of who you are. Your soul consciousness is like the signpost saying, this is our direction. This is where we're meant to be heading. This is the lesson that we're supposed to be learning in this lifetime. So this is what I do with my students, my clients, if it's a one-to-one, or my workshops, where we look at What is that burning thing inside you that, that what is it that you want to do? If you have that feeling that you've been here before, or you have that feeling there's a reason for you being here, there's a mission or a life purpose, then that is because your past life is calling you and saying, we need to sort it out in this lifetime. And that soul connection, that's soul consciousness, your higher self is saying, wake up, let me guide you, tune into that more. And so this is what I do with my students and clients now. We get them to sort of tune in, even if it's just through automatic writing or whatever it is. There's a process. There is a process to it, but it's about waking up. So you're not wasting that time while you're here.
So, can you share a moment when one of your students experienced a major shift in one of your classes?
Gosh, I was saying to someone the other day, I've looked at how many people I've seen around the world so far. And in the short period of time, I've had 11,500 people. So whether I can remember one, I'll try. And students, well, there's thousands there as well. I think that one of them, if I'm asking my team to sort of bring me one forward. Okay, yeah, okay. I had a lady recently, it was her relationship with her father in this lifetime. Okay, thank you. That's it. I've got it. Right, okay. It was one of my clients it was one of my clients, they've just given me. One of my clients in this lifetime, she lives out in Dubai. Um, it was to do with relationships, and the relationship that she had in this lifetime was to do with her partner in this lifetime. When we went back to a past lifetime, that partner in this lifetime was her father. And in that lifetime, he was very controlling. Now, I had to provide her evidence. Now, she came to me, she didn't tell me what was the situation, but there was an issue. I knew there was something that's coming up. So I will work psychically, sort of tune into that person's energy. What can I feel? There's any blockages? Where is it? Okay, I'm looking for something. Okay. So I always bring this into a session. So this I always say to the individual, this is them as a person, how they are today. This is like their soul and what I'm picking up. And this is what I teach my students as well. Now, made out of wood, we can see that there's grains on this wood. And I can see looking outside of this, that this physical piece of wood, the grains are showing me that where that tree was planted in that location, the weather affected it. One year it might have been a drought, or it's been overwatered, or there wasn't enough sunshine there, whatever. And we can see that from the physical, the actual wood. As a psychic and as I teach my students, I would tune into their energy fields around them and pick up what I'm finding. Now, I had a client once that said to me, she said to me, I'm sick and tired of you psychics. You all say the same thing. And I said to her, yeah, of course we do. Because everything you're experiencing, all your thoughts and feelings that you are experiencing in your life are held in your energy field. So everything, whether something scares us or we're happy, our chemicals in our body, our physical, scientific, biological body is processing the world. Our ears are hearing things, our eyes are seeing things, our skin we're feeling, we're touched, cold, warm, whatever. I said, so all the information you're receiving externally and you internally process, your brain is helping you to internally process that. Your body's feeling it. So if you're scared, you're going to have a dump load of chemicals, cortisone and whatever it is, and stress chemicals will come into your body. So as a psychic, I'm tuning in, I'm going into the layers of your energy field. I'm feeling your heart. If I'm feeling a client has got heartbreak, I'll tune in and I can feel the heart feeling quite vulnerable. So that's a psychic self that I'm doing that. I'm tuning into the energy of that person. Or, as a medical intuitive, I might pick up this something going on with the kidneys, whatever, because the kidneys are filtering, or the liver, might have toxins going on, heavy metals, or alcohol, whatever. I'm feeling it. I'm psychic. So I teach my students. And so, this is the part that I'm tuning into. So with this client, she sat in front of me and I'm seeing the different layers of her and I'm moving through. So that might be her she's 30 and going through into my 20s now. Am I tuning into her energy? And I might be going through, to her childhood. I brought something up about her childhood. I could see a relationship with her father in this lifetime. And then I was going through all the layers of herself. And this is what I said to you like in the beginning about the layers of ourselves. We have to learn certain things about ourselves for us to get to the next level or layer, like kindergarten, going to the next high school, whatever. And I said, there's something here held in a past life. There's many layers of you. And in that past life, I picked up that something about trying to please her father in the previous lifetime. And I said, that might mean then in this lifetime, there might be an issue going on with your father because he's come forward, or it might be your husband or your boyfriend or whatever it was at the time. And I said to her, this is your partner. Your partner that you have now, you're always trying to please him because in the past lifetime, it was your father, and your father stepped forward in your lifetime now, but he's come forward as your partner because we travel in soul pods. So soul pods meaning our lessons. So if one family member, we've got something going on with them there, if we don't resolve it in this lifetime, it's going to happen again in another lifetime, in another lifetime. I know with the toxic relationship I was in for 32 years, I mean, yes, there's a psychological point that because I've been brought up in a very dysfunctional family, I was most likely, as a counselor, I know this from my clients, to move into a toxic relationship that was very familiar to me because it was the behavior that we know. But also looking at it, there had to be something more than that because that's why, as a counselor, I personally didn't believe that we were having holding all the information. We only knew so much on the psychology side of things. So on a soul level, I asked my guides to come in. I work with Light Council, I channel information. I always ask them and I say, hey, is there any information here that you can tell me from the Akashic records what's going on for this client? They'll give me the information through the layers and they'll tell me and go, this relationship that she's having with her partner now, he would have been her father in a past life, and this is what's going on. So I have to prove it to her. And sometimes when I'm sitting in a session with a client, I'll work mediumistically and I'll go, okay, is there any family member that can give me some information? Because I just can't get this out of this client. I actually had this in a counseling client. A lot of clients who come to me, patients who come to me, they know I work in this way because they might have a block, they might detach from something. So I ask a family member, and this family member said to me, bring up about her auntie. When I said to her, well, what about your auntie in that relationship? Well, I knew about this auntie had abused this person because I was shown this. So there was something that was going on there so I can release it. So it's working on different levels and it's having the conversation with the soul, the higher self. It's more than just, looking at a client 3D side of them and that they're only going to remember so much information. A lot of it's held down deep, and that's if I think about the work I do, I've worked on cold cases with the police and governments and, you know, looking at, why was that person murdered? What was going on? What was, I look through the eyes of the murderer and I might look also through the eyes of the person that have been murdered. I work with them. So I work on a lot of cases around the world in finding people and working on, what had happened on that day because I work on so many different layers and levels. So I needed to have all the situations that happened to me so that then I was being trained up so I could do this. So yeah, there's so many cases that I worked and I can't even tell you one. I worked with zoo vets around the world. I had this the other day. I had a client, it was a horse that well, I've worked with clients around the world and zoo vets, but there was one particular client in the UK and it was really fun. It was bizarre. Well, um her horse that she said to me, can you tell me if my horse is happy living in the stables it's living in? So she wanted a yes or a no, and I said, well, I'm tuning in now, and your horse is telling me that there's something with the hoof. And she said, what? And I went, he doesn't quite understand what he has to do with his hoof, and he's showing me they look like giant straws, drinking straws. And she went, they're poles. And I went, you can't quite understand what you want him to do with them. And she was getting someone to train him to jump over these poles, and he didn't quite get it. And then he had told me that he didn't quite like the idea that she was so disconnected from him when they ride, when she goes hacking, that she was always thinking of something else in her head. And he felt that when she's riding him, he would like her to be connected to him, which was lovely. So I passed that message on. But then her horse in spirit came in at the same time and gave a message, which was really lovely.
What is your process when you communicate with spirit or the guides or the council?
And this is what I teach my students that, I teach them right from the very beginning that, I mean, the thing that I teach everyone is like be mindful because I'm a mindfulness practitioner. And by being mindful, you're about being in the present moment. The reason I say that is you become aware of how you are feeling. So say for instance, my students in the early days when I'm training them to learn about psychic mediumship or psychic or discovering their psychic self. Not everyone wants to be a psychic medium, but to bring this into your everyday life so that you can navigate through life a lot easier. It's about bringing your toolkit on board. So, in the early days, some of my students go, I had palpitations. I was really nervous and stressed. I said, no, 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 that's the feeling that you're opening up your heart chakra. So what I do is I teach them certain levels and layers of themselves so they become aware. So they become aware when it's their ego or it's their subconscious mind kicking in, and then they start learning that it's their highest self that's communicating with them. Or I teach them it's about their spirit guides who are connecting to them, or some of them are naturally mediums, and it's somebody in spirit talking to them. So the process is I get my students to learn about being mindful of their physical body, their environment, how it's affecting them, their everyday lives, about creating gratitude list of what they're grateful for, because it's so important about your mindset. You know, before you go to bed, if you go to bed worrying about something, your sleep is going to be all over the place. If someone's very open, I have a lot of people coming to me who are starting to discover about the psychic fields. If they're very open, sometimes their dreams are all over the place and they're all scattered, and they feel that they feel very tired and well, because they've been astral traveling, so they haven't actually, their energy's been so exposed that they're moving around in different dimensions. So I help them to sort of come back into themselves and to learn that it's a process. And how I do it is I teach them about opening up and closing their chakras. So it's closing everything down, being mindful of their energy, and give them exercises like if they're traveling out in public transport, and I talk about this on my Instagram and stuff. If you're out and about on public transport, if you're very open and eager like the sponge and like a child, like wanting to know about the world, you're going to receive everything. You're going to feel the emotions or sense it, or see things or hear things. People with buzzing in their ears, that could be literally spirits just trying to talk to you, or your higher self is, but you need to learn how to tune it in. So yeah, there's a process. I open and close my energy, and sometimes if I'm out and about, in a busy restaurant or a shopping mall, I don't want to be picking up, on everybody's faults and feelings, because I can. I don't want to know that all their relatives are waiting around for them to give them messages. Not unless it's really urgent or it's really important. So I teach my students about having a gatekeeper to be on guard, keep that energy your own space. First it's about the human part of themselves, mind, body, and soul, to learn about their minds, where their mind's at, to learn about their body, what's their energy, which is somebody else's energy. The empaths walk into a room, you can feel there's been an argument. You don't need to read the body language, but you can sense that feeling. If someone's very psychic and open, they might walk into a building and find out lots of information they didn't even realize it was there. So I help people to learn to open and close that energy and to manage it, because we're at the moment on our planet, so many people are becoming so open to energy that you can feel overwhelmed. You don't know that it's actually you're picking up on energy from other places around the world, or the person who lives next door, or a family member. So I help you to sort of manage that energy, open and close that energy. I teach my students that, and clients. That's what I do. That's the sort of process to open out. And then ask my guides, is there somebody in spirit that'd like to help me if I'm working mediumistically, or my guides, would you like to help me? So I ask them to come forward. But sometimes I'm out and about, someone comes popping in. I was woken up one morning. I won't forget, it was last year, 3:31 a.m. in the morning. And I opened my eyes and somebody said, I've been murdered. Can you help me? Young lady, because I work on cases like that. And I was like, oh God, it's like 3:31. Can you come back in the morning, please? She had been murdered. There was nothing I could do at that particular time. And I hadn't closed down all my energy. I was very open. And so it was easier for her to travel in that dream dimension. There's no barriers there. They can come in and out. And like loved ones, people who say to me they've had their loved one visit them, it's easier in that dream dimension. And then I said to my gatekeeper, come in, please protect my energy. I need to sleep, because as humans, we need that downtime. So, and then I got an email in the morning when I woke up. I looked at my emails and somebody from America had contacted me and said, could I work on a case? It was like a detective who asked me to work on a case. Somebody had been murdered and they needed some advice, blah, blah, blah. But not that they're going to say it to the media. I do a lot of cases which is not mentioned, but
So, what's it like bringing spiritual insight into like these traditional sectors? Like you work with police and vets. So, what's that experience like?
right. So there's a few things here. So being brought up in the world that I lived in as a child, my natural biological father studies Buddhism and left when I was age of 2. So I was already aware to some degree, and then obviously would see him as I was growing up and knew about Buddhism. Second dad is Italian Catholic, so learnt about something to do with the Catholic religion and faith. And again, a different class we lived in the UK, upper, lower, whatever, working class, whatever, I don't know, whatever. And then the third dad, Jamaican Rastafarian. So I learned about the Rastafarian belief and stuff like that. And then mum was a single parent for a while and stuff. And then we lived in a Hindu area growing up. So I learned about that faith. Then moved again later on, grew up in an area where it was Muslim faith. And then I ended up with my partner who's Jewish, non-Orthodox or Jewish, and his mother was a Quaker. So I learned all about these different religions and faiths. And then I sent my children to a Christian school. So I learned quite a lot about faiths and religion and, whatever. There was that sort of things. And then I was very science-based because I needed to have proof. I didn't believe or trust it, what was written in the Bible or whatever book or Quran, whatever it was. To me, it felt quite man-made, and it felt I used to teach history back in the day as well. I was a teacher for a while, and I just thought at different periods of times that it just seemed a bit twisted to some degree. But I don't know. That was my own personal opinion. I just didn't feel it could relate to me. I didn't understand, like, the church that I used to go to wouldn't keep the doors open to let the homeless people live in there for a while over Christmas or when there's a snowstorm, whatever. And it didn't, whatever. Anyway, so that's why I looked at loads of different faiths and beliefs and religions, and it was only literally me having my own out-of-body experience that I connect myself to source, which I show other people how they have their direct connection. We don't need someone telling us that you have to come to us to reach through it. I teach people to give them the tools so they can have their own navigation system and they can connect to source and whatever. You don't need a religion. It's just, whatever. It's been funny connecting, or funny. It's been strange in a way connecting with zoo vets. But then I used to be a zookeeper back in the day. I looked after lions and tigers and elephants, and I lived in different parts of the world. That was my job originally. And some of my clients who've come to me, I didn't know they were zoo vets, and they've worked with me as in they wanted a reading, and then they say I'm a vet, and I'm like, well, okay, should we combine it? And I might pick up a telepathic message from their dog or cat or horse or whatever it is that they have, pass on the message, so they have that proof of it. And then I work with a lot of them as a medical intuitive. I might discover there's something with a horse, which I've done a few times in Dubai and other places around the world, and brought messages forward, and so they've been okay. Now with the police, it's I'd worked at a big college in London. I was a consultant there, teacher of metaphysics, and now I do it myself. And I'm creating my own school now, and police would go to them. I mean, TV would also, TV programs would also ask me to go on TV at the time, and I didn't want to. Um, but with the police and other bodies, again, it might be, I'm teaching someone now who's actually a detective, and she wants to know how can she tune into this to help her with work. I'm working with which is brilliant because being qualified and trained as a counsellor as well, I've got a lot of counsellor colleagues that come to me and say, "Oh, can we just add this to our thing so we can help with clients?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and it's brilliant. So I work with doctors as clients and psychiatrists, and there's a psychiatrist writing a book at the moment, and she's aware of angels, and I'm working with her. I channel information for her. I mean, there's a lot of information I've been connected to a lot of authors around the world. There's at least 20 authors around the world that I've helped them with their books because I've been channeling information. And these are all science-based, but they want that extra piece of information and it's helped them. So it's about combining it because we're more than what we see, the energy of who we are and what we are attracting. I did a manifesting workshop a couple of weeks ago and trying to help people to understand that where you're at in your journey, who you are, what you attract in. So that's what I teach people and students and clients. So it's just giving them the tools. But I'm no one special. I tune into Light Council, I tune into guides, I channel information, which is there. It's part of source. And luckily for me, near-death experiences give me the opportunity to have that direct connection. But I help others to have that connection in another way.
So, just some questions that I ask all my guests. What is the most important life lesson you have learned in this life?
I am more than what I see in the mirror, and to know there's something more, that I can connect directly to source. Well, that was my biggest lesson, and it's like knowing that I am more than me. I don't feel alone anymore. I used to feel alone, and I was depressed at one point. I was diagnosed post-traumatic stress after my accident. I felt very separated, and through my accidents, and heart stopping and everything else, it's made me aware that actually, do you know what? We're never promised the next second in our life. We have to live every minute as if it's our last. Be grateful for everything that we have and know that there's always a bigger reason or a bigger purpose why something's happened, and to look at that. And that's what I've done. That's the biggest lesson I've learned in life, is that, I need to sit with it first if something happens and go, okay, what is this teaching me? What's it showing me? If I don't know there and then, I'll write it down as I teach my students, write it down, keep a journal. And then there's going to be something in the next couple of weeks that will go, aha, now I know. So the biggest lesson is know that I am not disconnected to God, the universe, that I am part of that. And that's through love. When we connect through love, love for ourselves, love for others, that newborn baby, that animal, whatever it is, love connects us.
And what is your definition of God?
Oh, definition of God. I don't see God as in the as a creator, as in the sense of looks like a man. There's no gender. I don't see God as a gender. When I connected to source, God is that energy of love. That is that all forgiving love. That is that sensation of being accepted. And it's very hard in the sense of when you're a parent, it's like, do we accept our children at times? And it can be difficult at times. Sometimes we're challenged. But I feel God accepts us for whoever we are, whatever we've done, accepts us to some degree of whatever it is. Obviously, if you're going to commit murder, that's something totally different. But for me, God is that energy all around me. God is that big hug around me. God is the atmosphere, the energy, everything around me, the metaphysical world, everything. God is that. And it feels like it's that moment of that awareness, just like I was saying about that soul consciousness, us waking up. It's that awareness of knowing God is all around us. It's our energy around us. That every thought, every feeling that we have, we create more of that, because we know that of the law of attraction, the magnetic field. But God is that. God is the energy of everything around us. It's the universe. It's everything. So when we smile and look at a flower or a buzzy bee or a butterfly, it's like almost like God is looking at us and we're smiling with God and we're enjoying that every moment. So, you know, I have a gratitude every day. I create a gratitude list of everything. I was just posting on my Instagram. I had a bit of a panic attack a little while ago. I'm trying to walk further, increase my health. I got emotionally hijacked. I had to remind myself I have everything I need inside of me to help me. My body. I mean, look at us. We cut ourselves, we heal. I mean, if that's not to do with the God energy, it's crazy. So being in that panic attack, I had this little voice that came in, my higher self, that you can do this, you can get through this. Remember, it's just the breathing heavily. It's not that your lungs going to collapse again. It's like literally you're getting fitter. So for me, that's in that God, that's in that love. It's an unconditional love. So for me, that is not like a figurine of a man or whatever. It's literally God is around us in everything that we do, everything we enjoy. Children laughing, babies giggling, babies taking their first breath. That's God. That's in that energy field.
So, if you could have a cup of tea with any spiritual teacher, living or on the other side, who would it be and why?
It's funny. I go back for one moment because I just was told to say this. The reason why I see God like this and how my knowledge working with Light Council is that you're not separate. Because generally we think God is a figurine, God is up there, God is away from us. We feel detached. And the information I'm just receiving now from my guides is to say this, that when you know that God is all around you and everything that you do, that is beautiful. And in those moments that you feel that pain and that heartache, then you know that you're not separate. So that you know that God's always with you, whatever it is, you just have to ask. That's what I've just been told. So I had to pass the information on. Sorry. Okay, so I'll give you that. Because there's no detachment. I just was told to say to it, okay, I've done it. All right. Now you might laugh at this. You asked me about the tea and everything else. It's interesting. My students, and through the work that I do through channeling, and a lot of it's on YouTube, I often have, and this is going to sound bizarre, I often have Einstein come in when I'm teaching. So my classes, Einstein comes in, and I'm literally now just putting all this work together so people can purchase the pre-recorded sessions with Einstein where he gets excited and he downloads some information so my students know. So every time I'm teaching, there's always this new information that keeps coming out and popping out. So I have had Einstein come in a few times. And again, Jesus coming in and ascended master to help assist, and Zechariah has come in ascended master. He taught Jesus in the Dead Sea Scrolls about the Dead Sea Scrolls in the caves there, which sounds really bizarre. But ever since I had that seizure and that brain bleed where I was paralyzed for 14 weeks, I was told that my brain was being rewired so that some of the work that I'm going to go on to do. So, I couldn't walk or talk for 14 weeks. I couldn't even go to the bathroom. I couldn't eat. My children had to look after me. And when I did start talking, it was stuttering and I couldn't, yeah, it was crazy. And I had and specialists saw the brain scan after I had started getting back to normality and said, you've only got a small scar in there. I've lost a little bit of my memory. And sadly, well, not sadly, my children do remind me of certain things because I forget. But anyway, there's that. Anyway, so that rewired me so that all my ascended masters, whoever comes in, so who would like to sit down and have a cup of tea? Well, I feel like I do that every day actually through my work. Somebody say, well, God, well, actually, God is around me all the time, energy wise. So when I do take a seat outside, I've got a beautiful garden and I've got my studio out in the garden, which is beautiful. I sit out there, I'm watching the birds, I'm sitting by my river, the seal goes by every so often, and I'm having my tea or an ice lolly, whatever the day is, and I'm sitting with God.
So you did give us a message already, but is there any final message from Spirit to the audience?
Okay, thank you. I just heard this. Never feel that you're alone. Never feel that you are being punished. F Go into why is this happening in a sense, but then they just said to me, those who say why this is happening may not have that greater knowledge of who they are right now. Okay, thank you. So they just said it's about documenting, we call it a journal. They just said documenting where you're at on your journey so that when you document it, when you're writing it down in a journal, you're writing down how you might see a situation. But in that process of writing, thank you, they said, believe there'll be an insight. There'll be more of an insight that will come in. You'll have more of an insight what is happening. And you might hear some information. Thank you. Okay. So they said, never detach from yourself, never detach from the universe, God, whatever you wish to call it. You have always direct contact. So it's like they've just given me like a phone, like when you're on the phone, the old-fashioned phones, they sort of show me. You always have contact. It's when you shut down and you feel that you're alone, and you feel that no one is hearing you, or God doesn't love you, or that disconnection. They just said this is untrue. It's more about you knowing that you're always loved. It's not about God, universe being a parent and scolding you. It's more about helping you to learn that you are more than enough. Okay. So they said it's a bit like an example with a parent with a toddler. When you have a toddler, sometimes you could be overprotective and pick your child up every time it goes to fall over or do the shoelaces. So they never learn to do shoelaces. I remember my son, I got him Velcro in the end, and that's not thank you. They said no, that's not the way to do it. But it is about you knowing it's about you need to make those mistakes. A mistake is never a mistake. A mistake is supposed to happen. So a mistake is how you might see it, but it's never a mistake from the universe. It's not that you're being punished. It's when we're in fear, we disconnect. When we have lack of belief, I'm not asking about to believe in a religion, but when you have lack of belief that there is nothing else there, it separates you through fear. Your ego kicks in, your mind kicks in, you work from the logical side of things. When you're working from the heart center, as in keep bringing the information to your heart, be open to it. So, you know, I remember when I had my 5 miscarriages and I was told I'm never going to have children. That really separated me. I was really angry with God, the universe. I didn't call it universe, it was God. And I was like, what have I done wrong? The minute I do that, I separate myself. I don't have a greater understanding. I later started to understand what the process was, and I then had the 2 children, and they were in between the miscarriages. So it's really about trying to be open to the fact there is more than what you see and try to connect. So whether that's quieting the mind for 5 minutes, whether you want to call it meditation or being mindful, but just learning to quieten the mind and just to ask questions, just and see and what comes in. If something comes in on the subconscious level, the information that comes in and it's doubting you, you're too fat, you're too thin, you're ugly, you're this, you're that, that's a subconscious mind that's been overprotective, or it's past experiences that your subconscious mind has remembered, and it puts you in that protection field. So the minute that you're in fear, you're going down that avenue. But if you can go into the world by every every new day is a new day to make changes. Every second of the day is to make changes. Someone on a diet, you go and eat chocolate and they're, oh my God, I've got to start next week now. I've got to start tomorrow. No, you start the next second. You keep making those changes. Just that consciously being aware of where you're at and just opening yourself to endless possibilities and learning more. Be inquisitive child, not listening to somebody who says you should believe this or believe that. Even me, go and find out for yourself. Just because I'm saying this, it might not work for you. It might be that you don't believe it, and that's absolutely fine. Believe what you wish to believe. But I always say to my students, question everything I say, question everything, go out and find out for yourself as well.
Thank you so much, Anne. And if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
So my website is www.annebayford.com. So you can go there, or you can look at my Instagram, which is Anne Bayford, with an E, so ANNE, Bayford, BAYFORD, and also have a YouTube channel. So I put a lot of information out on that as well. But yeah, reach out to me, and you'll see my email address on there. So it's admin@globalsoulsister.com. But again, it'll have that on my Facebook page and also Instagram. But yeah, I'm reachable. I'm here.
And what's coming up for you? Any new workshops, classes,
Yes. So at
books?
the moment, yeah, well, book. I've been trying to write a book for the last 2 years. I've been so busy. Yes, I've been writing, but that's not happening yet, the book. But yes, it will go out because it needs to go out. But yes, I've been running classes for now the last 4 years online, and those classes are teaching people to connect to themselves, so higher self, whatever. And there's also psychic mediumship. The mentorship comes out shortly. And also there's going to be some online courses because I have a lot of clients around the world and sometimes my time zone don't match up. So I've been asked quite a few times now, we are please do pre-recorded classes and so they can purchase them and then that way they can then come to me once a month when I do during the middle of the day on a I don't know, on a weekend where they can connect me from a workshop, whatever. So there's a lot getting ready in the background, which will be going out very, very soon, shortly. But people can email me, ask me questions about my next course or my next workshop, and I'll let them know because I teach about 5 times a week now, and I do a Monday channeling session where they can come along and I do a card reading as well, which they might like.
Thank you so much for your time and for this beautiful conversation. There's so many more questions, but I guess I'll, until next time.
Next time, yeah, I'd love that. Absolutely love that.